Hey, I'm Liam, 29 years old, and if I had to describe my family in one word, it would probably be exhausting. Don't get me wrong, we're close in a way, but our dynamics? Let's just say they're far from balanced. Growing up, it was your typical household, ups, downs, and everything in between. But as I got older, I realized just how skewed things really were. My mom, the self-proclaimed matriarch, thrives on being in control. She has a habit of micromanaging every detail of our lives, even when it's completely unnecessary. Then there's my older sister, Sophie. At 32, she's always been the golden child. In Mom's eyes, Sophie can do no wrong. And then there's my younger brother, Noah. At 26, he's the Switzerland of our family, neutral, avoiding conflict, and staying out of everyone's way. As for me, I'm stuck in the middle, never quite living up to Sophie's perfection, but also not gliding through life like Noah seems to. Recently, my dad retired, and Mom decided we needed a family gathering to celebrate. Naturally, she didn't ask for anyone's opinion. She just declared it was happening. She set the date and time, then repeatedly reminded us all to be there and on our best behavior. Translation? Don't do anything that makes her look bad. The week leading up to the party was predictably tense. Mom has this thing where she calls Sophie and me separately to talk about each other. She told me Sophie had found the perfect gift for Dad, and then asked what I was bringing. When I mentioned I was putting together a scrapbook of Dad's career highlights, she paused before saying, "Well, I'm sure he'll appreciate the effort." That's Mom speak for, "It's not good enough." Sophie's gift, by the way, turned out to be an expensive watch. I could already feel the comparison creeping in before the party even started. The day of the gathering, I was running late, not intentionally, but because I'd spent extra time making sure my scrapbook was perfect. When I finally walked into my parents' house, I was greeted with forced smiles. Mom was the first to comment, casually mentioning how everyone else had been on time. I let it slide, as I always do, and handed over my gift. The atmosphere was exactly what you'd expect. Polite small talk, masking an undercurrent of tension. Sophie, as usual, was glued to Mom's side, playing the role of the dutiful daughter. Noah, true to form, sat quietly in the corner, scrolling on his phone. Dinner was nice, though Mom didn't miss an opportunity to remind us all she'd cooked it from scratch. Then came the gift-giving. Sophie's watch was presented first, in a sleek box, of course. Mom gushed about how thoughtful it was, and Dad immediately put it on, earning a round of applause. When it was my turn, I handed over the scrapbook, explaining that it was filled with photos, clippings, and notes from Dad's colleagues over the years. Dad seemed genuinely touched as he flipped through the pages. Mom, not so much. Her tight smile and lukewarm, "It's very sentimental," said it all. And that's when things took a turn. If you've ever been in a situation where the air shifts and suddenly everyone's attention is on you, you'll know exactly how I felt in that moment. We had barely wrapped up the gift exchange when Mom announced in her most dramatic tone that $500 in cash, apparently part of Sophie's gift, was missing. She said it so casually, like she was just sharing an observation, but her eyes darted straight to me. I swear, the entire room froze. For a second, I didn't even process it because, well, I didn't even know there was cash involved. But Mom made it a whole thing. She started talking about how she'd seen the envelope in the kitchen earlier, and now it was nowhere to be found. And then came the gut punch. "You know, Liam, with your history of financial struggles, I just hope this isn't one of those moments." Seriously? She was referring to a rough patch during college when I'd needed a loan from them to get by. That was years ago, and I'd already paid it back. But here she was, bringing it up in front of everyone, essentially accusing me of stealing. Sophie, ever the helpful sibling, chimed in. "You did seem kind of nervous when you got here." Nervous? I was late because I was putting the final touches on Dad's scrapbook, not plotting a heist. Noah stayed silent as usual, but the weight of everyone's eyes on me was unbearable. I felt like I was trapped in some bizarre family courtroom. "I didn't even know there was an envelope with cash," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. All I brought was my gift, which I handed over the second I got here. Mom wasn't buying it. Well, she said with that tight-lipped smile, the money didn't just vanish, did it? That's when I realized I wasn't going to talk my way out of this. If I wanted to clear my name, I needed proof. Thankfully, I had it. I pulled out my phone, my heart pounding as I unlocked it. All right, I said, my voice calm but firm. Let's settle this. Mom immediately waved her hands, saying something like, "Oh, there's no need to make a big deal out of this." But it was too late. If she wanted to accuse me in front of everyone, then we were handling this right here, in front of everyone. First, I opened my budgeting app. For the past year, I'd been tracking every single expense down to the penny. I showed them my purchases from earlier that day, a quick grocery run and gas for my car. No mystery withdrawals, no missing funds. Then, I pulled up my bank app, scrolling through transactions to prove my accounts were solid. Still not satisfied. Fine. I opened my phone's location history, showing time-stamped GPS points that documented my drive straight from my apartment to their house. No stops, no detours. No way I could have taken an envelope I didn't even know existed. Noah, bless him, finally spoke up. "Yeah, that makes sense," he said, glancing at Mom. "I don't see how Liam could have done it." Some cousins nodded in agreement, but Mom wasn't ready to back down. "Well, just because there's no direct proof doesn't mean," she started, but I cut her off. "Mom," I said, locking eyes with her, "you're accusing me of stealing in front of everyone based on nothing but a hunch. That's not fair, and you know it." Sophie jumped in again. "You're being so defensive, Liam. It just makes you look guilty." That was the final straw. I stood up, holding my ground. "I'm not being defensive. I'm defending myself from a baseless accusation. If you're going to claim I stole something, you better have actual proof." Dad, who had been sitting quietly this whole time, finally decided to step in. "Do we even know the envelope is really missing?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Sophie faltered, clearly not expecting the question. "Well, I gave it to Mom earlier in the day for safekeeping." All eyes turned to Mom. For a second, she looked genuinely caught off guard. "Oh, I suppose... I mean, I might have put it somewhere." "Let's look around," she said, her tone suddenly light and breezy like she hadn't just accused her own son of theft. So, we split up to search the house. People checked drawers, cushions, even the trash. Meanwhile, I kept an eye on Mom. Something about her demeanor felt off. She was hovering near her purse, glancing around like she didn't want anyone to notice. And then I saw it, a sliver of white sticking out of her purse's side pocket. My stomach dropped. No way. I walked over, reached for it, and pulled out the envelope. Holding it up, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Found it." The room went dead silent. Sophie's handwriting was right there on the front, the missing envelope. Mom's face turned bright red. "Oh, I must have... I didn't realize I cut her off. "You mean the envelope you accused me of stealing was in your purse this whole time?" She stammered something about stress and how it was all a misunderstanding, but nobody was buying it. Dad looked mortified. Noah gave me a small, knowing nod, and a few cousins just shook their heads in disbelief. Sophie didn't say much, probably realizing how bad this all looked. I didn't stick around long after that. I grabbed my things and left, barely hearing Mom's frantic attempts to explain herself as I walked out the door. By the time I got to my car, the weight of everything hit me. I'd cleared my name, sure, but at what cost? My own family had turned on me without hesitation. And even after proving my innocence, I knew this wasn't the end of it. Something told me the fallout was just beginning. When I got home that night, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my gut. Sure, I'd proven my innocence, but the whole thing had left me rattled. It wasn't just about the accusation. It was the fact that my own mother had been so quick to throw me under the bus. Even after finding the envelope in her purse, she couldn't fully own up to what she'd done. I replayed the scene in my head 100 times, wondering if I could have handled it differently. Maybe I shouldn't have left so abruptly. Maybe I should have confronted her more directly, but every time I thought about Mom's tight-lipped smile and Sophie's smug little remarks, my frustration flared all over again. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Noah. It was short and to the point. "Mom was way out of line last night. You did the right thing standing up for yourself." Noah doesn't usually get involved in family drama, so hearing that from him felt like a small win. At least someone in the family had my back. Sophie, on the other hand, was a different story. I don't follow her on social media, but one of our cousins sent me a screenshot of her latest post. It was one of those passive-aggressive gems that read, "Family drama is so exhausting. Some people just can't let things go." No names, but it didn't take a genius to figure out who she was talking about. I decided to let it slide. Arguing with Sophie wasn't going to get me anywhere, and honestly, I didn't have the energy. But of course, Mom wasn't about to let me move on so easily. That afternoon, she texted me too. "We need to talk. You overreacted last night, and it was really unfair to me." Unfair to her? That was rich. She'd publicly accused me of stealing, and then tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding. And now I was the one who had overreacted. Classic mom logic. I ignored her message. I needed space to cool off, and I wasn't about to let her guilt trip me into thinking I was in the wrong. The silence didn't last long. Over the next few days, I started hearing from other family members who'd been at the party. A few cousins reached out to say they couldn't believe what had happened and that they were on my side. One even mentioned how uncomfortable it had been when Mom started accusing me, especially since it was clear I hadn't done anything wrong. But not everyone saw it that way. Some relatives, the ones who've always been closer to Mom and Sophie, called to tell me I needed to forgive and forget for the sake of the family. One aunt went so far as to say, "You know how your mom gets when she's stressed. You shouldn't take it so personally." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one being accused of stealing in front of the entire family. Then Sophie called. I didn't want to pick up, but I figured ignoring her would just add fuel to the fire. She wasted no time laying into me, accusing me of embarrassing Mom on purpose. "She's been so stressed with Dad's retirement," Sophie said, her tone dripping with self-righteousness. "You could have handled things privately instead of storming out and making a scene." I took a deep breath and kept my voice calm. "Sophie, let's get one thing straight. I didn't make a scene. Mom accused me of stealing in front of everyone, and I defended myself. If you think that's me being dramatic, then maybe you need to take a closer look at the situation." She tried to argue, but I wasn't having it. "I'm not going to sit here and be gaslit by you or Mom," I said firmly. "If she wants to fix this, she can start by taking responsibility. Until then, I'm done." And with that, I hung up. Over the next few days, things only got messier. Mom, true to form, started spreading her own version of events to the extended family. According to her, I had overreacted and humiliated her in front of everyone. She conveniently left out the part where she falsely accused me, or where I found the envelope in her purse. The worst part, some people actually believed her. I started getting texts and calls from family members I hadn't heard from in ages, all offering their unsolicited advice. Some were supportive, others not so much. "Maybe you should just apologize to keep the peace," one uncle suggested. Apologize? For what? Not stealing? Meanwhile, Sophie doubled down on her passive-aggressive social media posts. This time, it was a string of vague quotes about family betrayal and how some people thrive on creating drama. Her friends chimed in with comments like, "You're so strong for dealing with this," and "Some people just love to play the victim." I rolled my eyes and put my phone down. Noah was the only one who seemed genuinely supportive. He called me late one night to check in, and while he didn't say much, it was clear he was on my side. "I've noticed the favoritism for years," he admitted quietly. "But I guess I've just stayed out of it to avoid the drama. I'm sorry you're dealing with this." Hearing him acknowledge it was oddly validating. It wasn't just me who saw the cracks in our family dynamics. But as comforting as that was, it didn't make the situation any less frustrating. Mom and Sophie had drawn their battle lines, and I was left trying to navigate the fallout. One thing was clear, though. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into backing down. If they wanted to repair this mess, the ball was in their court. Until then, I was done playing by their rules. The fallout kept spiraling, and honestly, I was starting to feel like I'd stepped into a bad soap opera. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Sophie decided to escalate everything by taking her grievances to the family group chat. It started with a long, overly emotional message about how family should stick together, and how she was heartbroken that I was tearing us apart. She threw in lines about how Mom was devastated and how my refusal to let things go was the real issue. The group chat exploded. Relatives who'd been quiet suddenly had opinions, and it was chaos. Some jumped in to support Sophie, saying I needed to stop being so dramatic. Others called her out for being manipulative. One of my cousins even said, "You don't get to play the victim when you helped accuse Liam of stealing." I stayed quiet at first, hoping the storm would blow over. But when Mom joined in, claiming that I'd misunderstood her intentions and that she never actually accused me of anything, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Let's get one thing straight," I typed, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and adrenaline. "Mom did accuse me, loudly and in front of everyone. She made it clear she thought I took the envelope. And let's not forget that it was found in her purse. So, unless you have a better explanation for that, I don't think I'm the one tearing this family apart." The chat went quiet for a few minutes after that. I could imagine everyone on the other side of their screens, either stunned or scrambling for a response. Mom eventually replied, claiming that she was just stressed and that it was all a misunderstanding. Sophie backed her up, of course, saying, "This could have been handled privately, Liam. You didn't need to make it a public spectacle." I laughed out loud when I read that. "Public spectacle?" I replied. "Mom made it public when she accused me in front of everyone at the party. All I did was defend myself." Dad, who rarely says much in these kinds of situations, finally chimed in with a half-hearted plea for everyone to move on. "Let's stop the drama and focus on moving forward as a family," he wrote. I felt my frustration boil over. It wasn't the first time Dad had tried to smooth things over without actually addressing the root of the problem. I understood that he hated conflict, but his constant neutrality only made things worse. Despite all this, the chat eventually fizzled out, leaving everyone in their respective corners. I thought that would be the end of it, but the next day, something unexpected happened. I got an email, anonymously sent by one of my cousins. The message started with, "I just want you to know you're not alone." They went on to share their own experiences with Mom's favoritism, describing moments where they felt dismissed or overlooked. They even mentioned a few incidents where Sophie had been given preferential treatment at their expense. It was strange, reading those words. On one hand, it was validating to know I wasn't imagining things. On the other, it was depressing to realize how deep this pattern ran. Around this time, Noah called again. He told me he'd noticed the group chat drama, but had stayed out of it because he didn't want to add fuel to the fire. "You know how they are," he said. "The more you push, the harder they dig in." I appreciated his perspective, but I couldn't let it go as easily as he could. For years, I'd bitten my tongue, gone along to get along, and let Mom and Sophie's behavior slide. This time felt different. This time, I needed to stand my ground. One of my friends suggested I look into family therapy. At first, I brushed it off. It felt like an impossible ask, given how resistant Mom and Sophie were to taking responsibility for anything. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If there was ever going to be any hope of fixing this, we needed a neutral third party to help unpack the years of baggage. I brought up the idea during a phone call with Mom. Predictably, she wasn't thrilled. "Therapy?" she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Liam, don't you think this is a bit extreme? We just need to sit down as a family and talk things out." "Mom," I said, keeping my tone steady, "we've tried talking. It doesn't work because every time you and Sophie deflect or make excuses. Therapy isn't about assigning blame. It's about understanding why things keep happening and how we can move forward." She hesitated, but didn't outright refuse. "I'll think about it," she said, clearly trying to buy time. I wasn't holding my breath, but to my surprise, Dad stepped in later that day. He called me, and said he thought therapy might actually help. "Your mom means well," he said. "But she struggles to admit when she's wrong. A therapist could help her see things from your perspective." It wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but it was something. Meanwhile, the anonymous cousin reached out again, this time over the phone. They told me about more incidents with Mom and Sophie, little moments that mirrored my own experiences. It was oddly comforting, hearing someone else articulate the same frustrations I'd felt for years. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. As word spread, other family members started reaching out too. Some were supportive, telling me they'd noticed the favoritism but had never spoken up. Others were more neutral, urging me to be the bigger person and forgive Mom for the sake of family unity. Forgive her? Sure, maybe someday. But that day wasn't today. A few days after the group chat drama, I received something I never expected: a handwritten letter from Mom. I stared at the envelope for a good 5 minutes, unsure whether to open it. Mom wasn't exactly the sentimental type, and this felt out of character. When I finally read it, I didn't know how to feel. The letter started with an apology. She admitted she'd been wrong to accuse me, and said her behavior at the party was unacceptable. She chalked it up to stress from hosting and claimed she never meant to hurt me. For a second, I thought this might be a step toward progress, but then she pivoted, adding how hard it was to keep the family together and how I'd made things worse by overreacting. It felt less like a genuine apology and more like damage control. Mom's reputation mattered to her, and with the family split over the situation, this letter seemed like her way of trying to save face. The timing was suspicious too. Sophie must have heard about the letter because she called me later that evening, practically fuming. "Mom's bending over backward to make amends, and you're just sitting there doing nothing," she snapped. "Sophie," I said, keeping my voice calm, "if you think a half-hearted apology fixes years of favoritism and what happened at that party, you're kidding yourself." Her tone shifted, dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, I forgot. Liam, the eternal victim, maybe write a blog about it or something." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Around the same time, I mentioned the letter to Noah. His reaction was measured, as always. "I think she's trying in her own way," he said. "But I get why you're hesitant. It doesn't undo what happened." He wasn't wrong, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down just because Mom put pen to paper. Words were easy. Actions. That's where the real work was. The idea of family therapy was still on my mind, so I brought it up again during a call with Dad. To my surprise, he agreed to the idea without much resistance. "Your mom's not perfect," he admitted, "but maybe this will help her see how things have affected you." Convincing Mom, however, was another story. She balked at the idea, insisting therapy was unnecessary and that we could work things out as a family. I stood firm, explaining that the constant cycle of favoritism and blame wasn't something we could just talk our way through. It was clear this wasn't just about one incident. It was years of built-up resentment coming to a head. Eventually, Dad managed to convince her to at least try one session. Sophie was less cooperative. "I don't need therapy," she scoffed when I brought it up. "You're the one with the issues, not me." Classic Sophie. Still, the first session happened. Mom was defensive from the start, deflecting questions and framing herself as the victim. She threw out phrases like, "I was just trying to keep the peace," and "I didn't mean for it to come across that way." But the therapist wasn't letting her off the hook. They gently but firmly pointed out how her actions, intended or not, had hurt me and disrupted the family dynamic. Sophie, of course, chimed in to dismiss everything. "This is being blown way out of proportion," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not like anyone's perfect." I focused on staying calm, but it was hard not to snap back. The therapist helped redirect the conversation, emphasizing that my feelings weren't just valid, they were a necessary part of the healing process. For the first time, someone outside the family was saying what I'd been feeling for years. This wasn't about one moment. It was about a pattern of behavior that had left me feeling alienated. By the second session, something shifted. Mom began to open up, admitting that she'd felt pressure to hold the family together and often took that stress out on me. "You've always been more independent," she said, her voice quieter than usual. I guess I thought you didn't need as much attention as Sophie or Noah." It wasn't an excuse, but it was a start. The breakthrough came during the third session. Mom broke down in tears, admitting that her favoritism toward Sophie wasn't fair and that accusing me at the party had been a huge mistake. "I just wanted everything to be perfect," she said, her voice shaking. "And when things didn't go the way I planned, I lashed out. I'm sorry, Liam. I really am." For the first time, it felt like a genuine apology. Even Sophie looked caught off guard by Mom's emotional confession. She didn't say much, but the usual smugness was noticeably absent. I wasn't ready to forgive everything in that moment, but I told Mom I appreciated her honesty. It didn't erase the past, but it gave me hope that things could change. Noah, who'd stayed quiet during most of the sessions, pulled me aside afterward. "I think this is good," he said. "It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction." He was right. Progress was slow, but it was happening. After the therapy sessions, I didn't expect everything to change overnight. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if things would change at all. But for the first time in years, I felt like there was a sliver of hope. Mom started making small efforts, though they felt cautious, like she was testing the waters. She called me one evening, not to pry into my life or talk about Sophie, but to ask how I was doing. It caught me off guard. Normally, our conversations were transactional, focused on her plans or updates about the family, but this time, she seemed genuinely interested. "I just wanted to check in," she said, her tone softer than usual. "I know things have been strained." I didn't pour my heart out or anything, but I appreciated the gesture. "I'm doing okay," I said simply. "Thanks for asking." Meanwhile, Sophie remained Sophie. Therapy hadn't exactly been a transformative experience for her. She'd sat through the sessions, but I could tell she still saw herself as the victim in all of this. She wasn't as vocal about it anymore, though, probably because Mom's confession had taken some of the wind out of her sails. Noah stayed steady, as always. He didn't say much, but his quiet support meant the world to me. It felt good to know that someone in the family truly understood where I was coming from, without trying to downplay or dismiss my feelings. Despite the progress, I decided to keep my boundaries firmly in place. I wasn't ready to dive back into family gatherings or act like everything was fine. Instead, I took things one step at a time. When Mom invited me over for dinner a few weeks later, I made it clear I wasn't interested in a full family reunion. "Just you and Dad," I said. "I'm not ready for more than that yet." To my surprise, she agreed without pushing back. When I showed up, the atmosphere was different. There was no tension, no whispered comments about my choices, no comparisons to Sophie. For the first time in years, it felt like I could breathe around them. Dad even apologized, in his own quiet way. "I should have spoken up sooner," he said as we sat on the porch after dinner. "You didn't deserve what happened, and I'm sorry for not stepping in." It wasn't a grand, sweeping apology, but it felt genuine, and that was enough for now. Online, I kept getting support from strangers who had read my story. I'd shared bits and pieces of the fallout, and the responses were overwhelming. People encouraged me to keep standing my ground, to prioritize my mental health, and to hold firm to the boundaries I'd set. It was validating to hear from others who'd been through similar experiences with toxic family dynamics. One message in particular stuck with me. Change takes time, and it's okay to move forward at your own pace. Just remember, you don't owe anyone your peace. That became my mantra. Sophie, of course, wasn't thrilled about the new dynamic. She kept making snide comments during group chats and posting vague, passive-aggressive things on social media. I ignored her. I'd spent too many years letting her words get under my skin, and I wasn't about to give her that power anymore. As for Mom, she was trying. Slowly but surely, she seemed to recognize the impact of her actions. It wasn't perfect, and I didn't expect it to be, but the fact that she was making an effort meant something. One day during a phone call, she said, "I know I've messed up a lot, and I can't change the past. But I want to do better, for you, for the family." It wasn't everything I needed to hear, but it was a start. Looking back, the whole ordeal taught me a lot about myself and my family. For years, I'd bent over backward to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to live up to expectations that were never fair to begin with. I'd stayed quiet when I should have spoken up and let things slide when I should have stood my ground. But this time, I did stand up for myself. I set boundaries. I demanded accountability. And while it wasn't easy, it felt like a step in the right direction, not just for my relationship with my family, but for myself. There's still work to be done. I don't know if Mom will ever fully understand the hurt she's caused, or if Sophie will ever stop seeing herself as the center of the universe. But that's okay. I'm not responsible for fixing them. I'm only responsible for protecting my own peace. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. Some days, I feel hopeful. Other days, I'm still angry. But I'm learning to sit with those feelings, to let them exist without letting them control me. I don't know what the future holds for my family, but I do know one thing. I'm not going back to the way things were. And that, to me, feels like progress. Story 2. This narrative has a title. I made sure my sister lost custody when she said I posed a threat to my own children. Hello, everyone. Big news before we get into today's video. I have started a new Reddit account. This time, the background isn't Minecraft. Instead, it has Subway Surfers with a seasonal Christmas motif. Take a look, subscribe, and get involved. The description contains links. I'll see you there. Let's begin the video now. Okay, so here is the problem. I'm Lucas, a 36-year-old single father of 2 wonderful children. Ethan is quite energetic, frequently drawing anything or posing endless dinosaur-related queries. Mia, who is 6 years old and exceptionally intelligent for her age, has a fascination with puzzles and may spend hours solving them. We lead a modest existence. Not much, but we're content. Or we were anyhow. That is, until my sister Natalie chose to put her nose in the wrong place. Natalie, 39, is married to Adam, and the couple has 2 children, Emma, 8, and Liam, 11. You would assume Natalie had it all together if you met her. She has the Pinterest-perfect home, the corporate job, and she constantly dresses as though she's headed to a magazine photo shoot. I don't mind Adam being at home with the kids, but the chemistry there isn't right. He constantly appears to be on the verge of losing it. I never got along with Natalie when I was a kid. The golden kid was her. The pet of straight A's instructor. Observing the regulations at all times. Me? Not at all. I used to be grounded for snooping around or not doing my schoolwork. I've put a lot of effort into getting my adult life in order, particularly since I became a father. However, Natalie continues to act as though I'm that disobedient teen. She enjoys constructively criticizing everything I do, particularly the way I raise my children. We hosted a family get-together at our parents' place a few weeks ago. These occurrences are uncommon, as everyone pretends to get along in order to maintain harmony. Along with their cousins, Ethan and Mia were having a good time playing and laughing in the backyard. Until Natalie opened her mouth, it was pleasant. In front of everyone, she made a significant remark on how children who are not disciplined sufficiently end up being troublemakers in the future. While glancing straight at my kid, who had dropped his Coke after tripping, my father gave me a look that said, "Don't fall for it." I dismissed it with a laugh and went on, but I was furious within. Even when Natalie is feigning to make a broad statement, she has a knack of making everything seem like a personal assault. After a few days, I receive a knock on my door. When I open it, 2 CPS employees are standing there. My heart fell. The woman stated that they needed to do a welfare check after receiving a tip regarding dangerous living circumstances. My children are in the living room, completely uninformed, and I'm standing there trying to comprehend what's happening. I opened the door for them. Naturally. It felt terrible, even though I had nothing to conceal. They went over everything, inquired about our daily schedule, examined the children's bedrooms, and even made sure we had enough food in the refrigerator. My children were kind but perplexed as to why these strangers were questioning them after they spoke with Ethan and Mia. They informed me that everything appeared to be okay, and that the matter had been closed when they eventually departed, but the entire ordeal left me feeling unsettled. I immediately recognized the culprit. Natalie. She had been making such jabs during the event, and she most likely chose to escalate the situation by contacting CPS. The problem was that this was no longer merely trivial. She went too far. It might have been far worse. What if I hadn't been believed by the CPS employees? What would happen if my children said something benign but misunderstood? At the next family gathering, I made the decision to face Natalie. I asked her whether she had heard of someone filing a CPS report against me, but I didn't make any direct accusations. Her answer: "Well, people just care about the kids and want what's best for them," she added with a serious smirk. I only needed to hear that. The remainder of the family, they didn't help. Although they didn't want to take sides, my parents were outraged by the CPS visit. Family is family. My mother said this repeatedly. Adam simply remained silent, as he always did. Natalie also pretended that she had done nothing wrong. I'll confess that I felt overburdened for a few days. She made me feel as though my entire universe had been upended. But then I came to a realization. This is what she has been doing throughout my life, making me feel inferior by taking little punches, pretending to be superior to everyone else. But she wasn't going to get away with it this time. Although I was unsure of my exact course of action, I was certain that I would not allow her to meddle with my family once more. When she attempted to portray me as an inadequate father, she took this personally. If she wanted to fight, she chose the wrong guy. I became increasingly aware that she was no longer only making jokes as I played everything over and again. She made a conscious effort to destroy my life. It wasn't a casual insult or remark to call CPS. It was planned. I was struck with that understanding. Her supposedly flawless existence wasn't as flawless as she wanted everyone to think, for example, and I began to see things I hadn't previously. Once I began to pay attention, it was easy to notice the rifts in her marriage, the conduct of her children, and even Adam's behavior during family get-togethers. Everything was there. If you looked attentively, I'll begin with Adam. Adam was this calm, relaxed man when he and Natalie initially got married. When things became serious, he was the kind to lighten the situation by cracking a joke. However, he is now essentially a shadow of his former self. He seldom speaks at family gatherings unless Natalie asks him to. Even then, it seems as though he is scared of saying the incorrect thing. He is constantly exhausted and preoccupied. He doesn't even chuckle. No longer the same. He laughs nervously and artificially, as if he's waiting for Natalie's approval. Liam and Emma, the children, are a different matter. 11-year-old Liam used to be a boisterous, active child who would constantly draw Ethan into whatever crazy game he had come up with. He is now silent and always looks to see whether Natalie is observing him before acting. And every time Natalie raises her voice, even if it's not at her, Emma, who is 8 years old, appears to behave more circumspectly around her mother. Emma winces as if she anticipates being scolded. Then, at a family meal, Natalie yelled at Emma the moment she dropped her water. "You're really awkward. Is it impossible to eat one meal without creating a mess?" Everyone fell silent, except Emma, who only sat with her head lowered. Adam attempted to defuse the situation by tidying up himself, but before he could say anything, Natalie gave him a look that silenced him. The way things played out made my anger boil. Then there's the front of social media. Natalie's Instagram is a temple to her purportedly wonderful life. There are photos of trips, family game evenings, and exquisitely prepared meals where everyone is dressed in well-planned ensembles. However, things are different when you're with her in person. I once saw that Adam appeared utterly depressed in the majority of their photos. You could see he was only going through the motions in some of his grins, while others did not extend to his eyes. Even though it was faint, I couldn't help seeing it. Their idyllic little world appeared to have fractures all over it, if you paid enough attention. I had a talk with Adam that truly caused me to think. We were stranded at the grill together at another family cookout. It was just the two of us because Natalie had gone out to speak with our mother. Adam, who didn't typically chat much, started inquiring about my freelancing business, which surprised me. I described my time management strategy and how I managed to balance work and family time. "It must be nice to have that kind of freedom," he added, nodding in agreement. His tone was nostalgic rather than angry. He kind of paused before responding. Natalie plans everything down to the minute. When I asked him what he meant, I feel like I'm only there to obey orders sometimes. Although that wasn't a complete confession, it was sufficient. Natalie's urge to be in charge was a major factor in Adam's obvious difficulties. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years sent me a message a few days later. Rachel, Adam's old pal. Before he married Natalie, she and Adam were quite close. But as time went on, they became less close. Rachel contacted me because she was concerned for Adam after witnessing some of the family conflict unfold on social media. She informed me that Adam had been using private forums on the internet to rant about his marriage. She claimed that he felt stuck, as though he were always balancing on a tightrope. Everything was within Natalie's control. What Adam wore, what the children ate, and even how he used his leisure time. Rachel provided me with enough information to validate what I had been witnessing with my own eyes, even if she lacked images. I also became aware of some aspects of the children. Adam casually brought up Liam's academic difficulties during a family get-together. He claimed that although Natalie believed it was unneeded, the school counselor had suggested treatment for Liam's anxieties. All he has to do is sharpen his concentration. Liam is such a clever child, but he's obviously coping with much too much for his age, so she reportedly told Adam that was difficult to hear. Conversely, Emma had grown more reclusive. I once heard her telling Ethan that she didn't enjoy returning home because her mother gets upset all the time. The statement struck me like a ton of bricks, despite its simplicity. That is not how any child should feel about their own house. When I witnessed Natalie yelling at Adam in front of the children, it was the last straw. Adam had neglected to bring a particular kind of juice that Natalie requested for the children for a small family gathering. She attacked him as if he had committed a serious offense. The children were standing there, uneasy and silent. Adam simply accepted it. She muttered an apology and left to obtain what she desired. I became aware of Natalie's extent of control at that very time. She and I weren't only attempting to be the ideal sibling. Everyone in her vicinity, even her own family, was poisoned by her. I was aware that I couldn't stand by and let her continue to harm people, particularly her children. She was always putting them under strain and stress, and they deserved better, Adam as well. He obviously lacked the strength to confront her alone, so he needed someone to support him. I knew I had to do something when I realized how terrible things were with Natalie. The issue was that I was still unsure of what that something should be. It wouldn't be effective to call her out directly. She would simply claim to be the victim and deny everything, which she does with frightening skill. However, the more I observed and heard, the more I realized I had to make a case. Not a lawful one. Not yet, anyway. However, there is enough evidence to show the rest of the family and, in the event that things worsen, perhaps even assist Adam and the children. I began by taking notes first. I'm just writing down things I've noticed, nothing fancy. For instance, Natalie talked over everyone about her children's amazing discipline, while Liam, her eldest child, sat there silently picking at his food during the next family meal. My stomach turned when she even made a joke about how tough love is the main focus. Emma stopped instantly after dropping her fork once, as if she was terrified that Natalie would call her out in front of everyone. I noticed, but Natalie didn't even. Later that evening, I put it in writing. Adam began to open up more at this point, albeit hesitantly. I allowed him to speak when he felt comfortable without pressuring him. On one occasion, he disclosed that Natalie had removed the children's snacks due to her disapproval of their high sugar content. Not only junk food, fruits, crackers, snacks, everything. He informed me that because Liam was so hungry at night, he had begun smuggling food from the pantry. Natalie accused Adam of undercutting her parenting, while Adam said he had attempted to bring it up. That one stayed with me. Taking away food, that is. Children must eat. Although it's simple, it was a fantastic fit for Natalie's control-obsessed personality. It has nothing to do with the children's best interests. Everything had to be done her way, no matter what. Additionally, I began interacting with non-family members, such as some of the parents at Liam and Emma's school. I didn't ask questions about it. I only inquired about their children's progress and whether they were pleased with the teachers. Liam has been struggling in class lately, according to one parent. Natalie was reportedly summoned to a meeting by the instructor to talk about his nervousness. However, Natalie dismissed it, saying Liam simply needed to put in more effort. It was another piece of the jigsaw, but the parent didn't know much more than that. In the meantime, Adam's old buddy Rachel, who had contacted me, was a treasure trove. She began talking more about Adam's outbursts on those secret forums. She brought up the fact that Natalie used to shout at him in front of the children, accusing him of things like failing to fold the laundry properly or forgetting to acquire groceries. "I feel more like one of her employees than her spouse," he had written. I also received some screenshots from Adam's conversation concerning the children from Rachel. In one, he reported that Emma had begun to pee the bed once more. In retaliation, Natalie took away her nightly tail as a kind of punishment. I was sickened by that one. Children who wet their beds are under stress. Making Emma feel worse was Natalie's answer. The fact that she wasn't a tough love mom was becoming painfully obvious. It was misuse of the emotions. I continued to record everything. I once heard Liam telling Ethan that his mother said he had to study, so he couldn't play outside for more than 15 minutes. For heaven's sake, they were at a family gathering. During a family cookout, what does an 11-year-old need to learn? Emma unintentionally revealed at another event that she had been skipping school lunches since Natalie had mentioned that she needed to shed a few pounds. 8-year-old Emma. I'm not even sure how I managed to remain calm when I heard it. Adam simply sighed and muttered, "It's not worth arguing with her." When I brought it up to him later, "She'll just exacerbate the situation." I became aware of how profound this was at that point. Adam wasn't only worn out or overburdened, he was utterly vanquished. The children were suffering as a result of his lack of confidence in his ability to confront Natalie. I made the decision to start researching resources for him. I discovered details on men's support groups, family counselors, and even legal help programs in my area. I wanted Adam to have alternatives, even if I wasn't sure if he would ever utilize them. At this point, other family members began to notice Natalie's actions more clearly. "Does Natalie seem off to you lately?" My cousin Amanda questioned me as she took me aside at a family birthday celebration. Playing stupid, I led her to vent without letting her know how much I already knew. According to Amanda, Natalie yelled at her for setting a poor example and bringing cupcakes to the celebration, claiming they were excessively sweet. That's exactly what Amanda said. I'm not sure whether she's just stressed out or whether she has a serious illness. The moment I ran into Emma's instructor at the grocery store was pivotal. As we conversed, I noted in passing how much Emma enjoyed school. I needed an opening, but it was a white lie. "She's a sweet girl, but she seems nervous sometimes, like she's afraid of getting something wrong," the instructor said after hesitating for a bit. That really got to me. The family wasn't the only ones that noticed. It was also affecting the children's school lives. I put all of this in writing. Every remark, observation, and piece of proof I could find. In case Natalie's statements subsequently turned out to be untrue, I even started saving screenshots of her social media postings. It was no longer about being petty. This was to keep Emma and Liam safe. Adam didn't deserve to be confined in his own house, and they didn't deserve to live this way. I had a ton of knowledge at the end of it. Going to CPS was insufficient, at least not yet. Even though I wasn't sure what to do next, I knew that I couldn't allow her to continue harming others around her. Unexpectedly, everything began to fall apart. I didn't even need to do anything at this stage, which is odd. The hard lifting was being done by Natalie herself. It became more clear that her beauty was a thin facade the more she attempted to manipulate everyone around her. Adam was the first of all. He had been hinting at the dire situation at home for months. Although he never explicitly stated it, it was obvious that he was unhappy. Adam remained over to help me clean up one evening after Natalie bossed everyone around at another unpleasant family meal. He may have been delaying or simply wanted some time away from her, but I'm not sure. "I don't know how much more I can take," he murmured, letting out a long, exhausted sigh as we cleaned the counters. For the first time, he publicly acknowledged that things were not going well. I didn't press him. Adam is not the kind to be coerced into speaking. However, I assured him that he didn't have to do anything by himself. I told him that I had been researching resources for him, such as legal counsel and support groups. and for the first time in months, his eyes glowed. He seems to have been waiting for a lifeline to be thrown to him. Adam unexpectedly arrived at my house a week later. He appeared to have gone days without sleep. "Help me," he pleaded. "It's simple." We started working at that point. We discussed his alternatives after I provided him the list of resources I had compiled. We opened a separate bank account for it as one of our initial actions. It was only a spot for him to begin hiding money without Natalie discovering, nothing more. For Adam, it was a significant step, even though it seemed like a tiny one. It was the first time he was regaining some control. Natalie's actions, however, were becoming worse. She had another of her notorious meltdowns during the subsequent family gathering. It was over this time. Something absurd. Natalie asked for a meal, but my mom neglected to prepare it. Natalie exploded in front of everyone, claiming that following directions isn't that difficult. And why is everything in this family taken so lightly? The rest of us sat there looking at our plates awkwardly, while my mom looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Adam, who generally tries to diffuse the situation, said nothing. Even though he was barely keeping his composure, you could sense the anxiety on his face. As usual, the children found themselves in the center. Emma was about to cry, and Liam was ashamed. I drew Adam aside and inquired about his well-being after Natalie hurried off to settle down. "The kids are starting to notice more," he replied, just shaking his head. "Protecting kids from it is becoming more difficult." I was devastated by that. I was aware that I needed to do more to help him, not only for him, but also for Liam and Emma. Then the tipping point arrived. Adam texted me one day to ask if I could come get the kids from school. He was stranded at home with a problem, while Natalie had an emergency at work. It didn't bother me. I was able to observe Liam and Emma in a new environment. Liam's instructor drew me aside as soon as I arrived at the school. After a moment of hesitation, she replied, "I've noticed some changes in Liam. He has recently been more reclusive and expressed anxiety about returning home. When I informed Adam what the teacher had stated, I felt you should be aware." He seemed heartbroken. He said, "I don't know what to do anymore." I then recommended that he consult a family lawyer. He hesitated at first. He remarked, "It feels so final." I did tell him, though, that this was about more than just him. It was to keep Emma and Liam safe. That appeared to set him off, and a few days later, as Adam was beginning to move toward freedom, he met the lawyer for the first time. During another family meal, Natalie was further sinking herself. She launched into a diatribe about how no one can appreciate what I give up for this family. Adam didn't value her, she said. The rest of us were overly critical, and the children were unappreciative. It was similar to witnessing a live implosion. People began to see right through her the more she spoke. Even my cousin Amanda, who had consistently been one of Natalie's strongest supporters, began to distance herself. "She is wearing you out." After supper, Amanda confided in me. "I don't even know who she is anymore, when before I thought she had it all together." When Adam ultimately made the decision to file for divorce, everything reached a breaking point. He was slow to inform Natalie. First, he wanted to make sure everything was in order. He began collecting proof of her actions with the assistance of his attorney. There were emails, texts, and even some recordings of her ranting. It wasn't attractive, but it was required. Naturally, Natalie was unaware of what was about to happen. She was too preoccupied with attempting to steer the story. She began telling everyone who would listen that she was the one keeping the family together and that Adam was ungrateful and lazy. However, the more she spoke, the more people began to recognize her as a bully. Natalie lost it when she eventually learned about the divorce. She yelled at me over the phone, accusing me of poisoning Adam against her. "You're to blame for this," she screamed. "I've always made you jealous." Without a word, I hung up. I refused to contribute to her drama. Things became worse over the course of the following few weeks. Adam was ready when Natalie attempted to prevent him from accessing their shared accounts. The majority of her pals had already begun to distance themselves from her when she disparaged him in front of their mutual acquaintances. Even our parents, who had always been cautious about Natalie's rage, began to support Adam. They even assisted Adam in finding a new residence and volunteered to watch the children more frequently. Natalie found herself backed into a corner by the end of it. She had only herself to blame for the deterioration of her flawless image. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and melancholy as I saw everything happen. Adam and the children were finally leaving, which was a relief. However, I'm unhappy that it came to this. But I knew we were headed in the right direction. Now that the descent had started, it couldn't be stopped. Things between Natalie and Adam had reached a breaking point by the time the court hearing started. Natalie wasn't only upset, she was in a difficult situation. She immediately went into full damage control mode, although her attempts were ridiculous. She began to complain to anybody who would listen that Adam was a bad parent who was unable to cope with the demands of family life. She had been singing the same song for months, but this time there was more melodrama. The issue for her? No one believed it anymore. I had stayed away from Natalie the entire time, in part because I didn't want to give her any more ammunition, and in part because I was too busy assisting Adam in getting his lawyer ready. Rockstar Erin was. She was concentrated and crisp, without being ostentatious or showy. Erin assembled a strong case after reviewing all of the information Adam had gathered, including emails, messages, and even recordings of Natalie's outbursts. The objective was straightforward. Adam will have full custody, while Natalie will have supervised visits. Retaliation wasn't the point. It was for the children's safety. It was a difficult first day in court. Even though I hadn't been asked to testify yet, I accompanied Adam for moral support. Dressed up in what was obviously an attempt to seem like the ideal mother, Natalie entered the room with her lawyer. She was wearing this fake grin, but as soon as she spotted Adam and I seated together, her face became cold. If appearances could kill, I would be dead. Her lawyer's approach was precisely what I had anticipated. Make Adam seem untrustworthy and inept. They said that Adam was ill-prepared to manage the responsibilities of full custody and that Natalie was the principal caregiver, upholding order and discipline. It was all mirrors and smoke. The judge was unimpressed, particularly when Erin began to cast doubt on their assertions. Erin bringing up the child's academic record was one of the most damaging moments. She received notes from the school counselor and instructors that described Emma's retreat and Liam's anxiousness. Natalie's attorney attempted to minimize it by claiming that all children go through stages. Erin then confronted them with the counselor's suggestion that Liam continue his therapy, which Natalie had flatly disregarded. On that one, the judge made notes. Erin's playing of one of Adam's recordings was the following blow. As the children sobbed in the background, Natalie scolded him in front of them, calling him worthless and a disgrace. Natalie's attorney attempted to argue that the statement was taken out of context. Erin, however, gently pointed out that there is no excuse for saying such a thing to your spouse in front of your kids. Natalie's cheeks flushed, and she didn't make a quick retort for once. It was my time to testify on the second day of the trial. I was anxious because I knew Natalie's attorney would try to misrepresent my statements, not because I had anything to conceal. When I climbed to the top, I stayed true to the facts. At family get-togethers, I discussed what I had seen, Natalie yelling at the children for little matters. Adam was shut down whenever he attempted to intervene, and Liam and Emma were afraid to make a mistake. The judge leaned forward a little, and Natalie's attorney made no attempt to cast me in a negative light. They likely realized they couldn't turn it to Natalie's advantage and moved on swiftly. The number of people who came out to support Adam shocked me the most. My cousin Amanda, who had always supported Natalie, testified that she had witnessed Natalie yelling at Adam in front of everyone. She acknowledged that after ignoring Natalie's actions for years, she was unable to do so any longer. Natalie's self-defense efforts were a complete failure. She invited a few of her friends to serve as character witnesses, but it completely backfired. When questioned about the children's conduct, one of them attempted to compliment Natalie's parenting, but ultimately contradicted herself. The trial drama peaked when Natalie entered the stand, and they acknowledged that they seemed uptight and reserved at social events. She must have received coaching from her lawyer to maintain her composure. However, Natalie's rage overcame her. Natalie lost her temper when Erin began asking her why she had pulled Liam out of treatment. She launched into a lengthy tirade about how therapy is for children who are unable to cope with life and how she was instilling strength in Liam. It resembled slow-motion footage of a train derailing. The judge's look said louder than words could. Her own biggest adversary was this lady. The child's court-appointed guardian's report was the last nail in the coffin. Emma and Liam had both been questioned, and their remarks were devastating. After court came a difficult waiting game, but Adam was ready. He had done everything correctly, and now everyone could see the truth. At this point, our only option was to await the judge's ruling. However, we all knew the result in our hearts. Natalie had lost, and it was due to her own behavior rather than anything Adam or I did. Everyone felt relieved when the judge's decision was eventually made, with the exception of Natalie, of course. Liam was given to Adam in full custody, and Emma and Natalie were only allowed to visit him under supervision until she finished an anger management and parenting course mandated by the court. It exceeded our expectations in every way. Naturally, Natalie was enraged. She couldn't contain her rage once the decision hit her like a ton of bricks. As soon as the judge concluded her remarks, she hurried out of the courtroom, whispering to herself that the system was prejudiced against strong women. Adam and I simply looked at one another. I was glad it was finished, mostly because Natalie is Natalie. She would never go quietly for Adam. He spent the first several weeks after the ruling getting used to his new normal. In a nearby area, he moved into a comfortable 3-bedroom home. It was cozy and inviting, but not as large or ornate as the one he'd lived with Natalie. Above all, it seemed like a new beginning for him and the children. Liam and Emma were already using posters and string lights to adorn their bedroom when I first arrived. There was an instant change in their attitude. Emma was genuinely grinning, and Liam appeared more at ease. A genuine grin instead of the artificially forced one she had been wearing for years. Natalie, meantime, was falling apart. She attempted to portray the custody decision as a misunderstanding, but it was not well received. She posted an odd combination of phony cheerfulness and pity parties on social media. After a lengthy tirade about how the system always gives preference to the wrong people, she would share a photo from her monitored visit with the children and caption it with something like, "Being a mom is my greatest joy." The remarks were harsh, people pointing out her hypocrisy or simply disregarding her attempts to win people over. Online, she continued to lose it. She attempted to incite conflict in the family by claiming that everyone who backed Adam had betrayed her. After initially being reluctant to choose a side, my folks were ultimately over her. No sense offering to watch the children or bring food. They began to spend more time with Adam and the children. Even my cousin Amanda, who had previously stood up for Natalie, severed all connections. Amanda informed me, "I can no longer handle her toxic energy. She is wearing you out." As Natalie's financial circumstances deteriorated, her sense of loneliness only increased. She had to sell a lot of her valuable possessions, including the ostentatious SUV she used to boast about, in order to pay for court fees, child support, and the expense of her court-mandated lessons. Lost. The never-ending buying binges. A thing of the past. She even made the decision to downsize by moving into a smaller apartment, which she attempted to justify. But the truth was known by everyone. Naturally, Natalie had no intention of letting her resentment go. She dug out previous personal information about me in an effort to retake power one final time. Things that were irrelevant and from years ago. She attempted to circulate it among the family, presumably in an attempt to discredit me, but it failed horribly. It only made her appear weak and desperate, rather than making people hate me. Even those who had been undecided about her were at last finished. She's gone utterly crazy. After learning of her actions, one of my relatives texted me. Adam's home was eventually deemed a secure and stable environment by CPS, which closed the case against it. It was the last confirmation that he had done everything correctly. But Natalie continued to be on his radar, thanks to sporadic check-ins connected to her supervised visits. It served as a brief but welcome reminder that people had not forgotten what she had done. At a family gathering at the conclusion of all of this, Natalie came up to me. She appeared to be defeated. Natalie is no longer in charge. Adam and the children are doing well, and the others. At last, we can proceed without her shadow looming over us. A shadow of the person she once was. Almost. She made an effort to apologize, stating that she wanted to make apologies for her faults. I paid attention, but once she finished, I was honest with her. She had done too much harm to be forgiven. I responded, You did more than harm Adam and the children. You also caused agony for my family. I don't want you in my life, but I do hope you can improve. Story 3. The title of this tale is Older Brother Stole. Karma finally struck after my younger brother's fiancé wrecked our family. Hello everyone. I don't usually post private information online, but this has been really bothering me. To absorb everything, I suppose I simply have to put it out there. Thus, loyalty is the foundation of my family. As if our mother hadn't simply said that to sound smart, it served as our unspoken family motto. When the day is over, she would remark, "All you have is his family." And I believed that for a long time. There were 4 of us: Jake, the youngest at 22, Sarah, the second at 26, Alex, the eldest at 29, and myself at 24. Whether we liked it or not, we all played a part in the family. The golden child was Alex. If you know the kind, he is charming as heck, effortlessly skilled at everything, and just sufficiently ignorant to allow you to overlook his shortcomings. Alex is that person. He played quarterback in high school, got into a good university with no effort, and appeared to have everyone he met. But there were drawbacks to Alex's appeal. He was selfish in that nonchalant, ignorant manner that makes you feel like you're being crazy if you call it out, but he wasn't rude or harsh. Without asking if anybody else wanted the final piece of pizza, he would devour it, take your favorite jacket, and give it back soiled. His narrative was more engaging than yours, so he spoke over you over dinner. You know, little things. At the time, it didn't seem like much, but it built up. Then there was the pragmatic 26-year-old Sarah. It was Sarah who held everything together. Sarah was the one we went to when Jake needed help dealing with a professor, or Alex needed help controlling his ego. She disliked leaving things unsolved, so even though she had little time for drama, she constantly found herself drawn into it. She had a way of showing concern without being overly affectionate, which was ideal for me because I've always been, well, a little unsure of myself. That's my job, I suppose. The one in the center, attempting to solve everything. I wasn't as grounded as Sarah, or as ostentatious as Alex. I have consistently been in the middle, trying to meet the demands made of me without stomping on anyone's toes. The youngest, Jake, came next. Jake wasn't bashful, he was simply perceptive. He was a quiet person who would occasionally make a statement that perfectly captured the essence of the discourse. He was frequently underestimated, but that was a mistake. Jake was always observing, trying to understand how things operated, and making plans for his next move. He was not the most self-assured guy in the room, but he was intelligent and kind. Mom made sure we stayed together as we grew up. Who made a mistake didn't matter. It was paid for by the entire family. Skipped a task. Everyone received a lecture, 1 poor report card. Study sessions in groups were required. We voiced our displeasure. Certainly, but I believe we secretly valued it. For a while, that framework gave us the impression that we were all in this together. That loyalty was successful. Alex would intervene if someone made fun of Jake. Sarah would pull Alex back to reality if he became overconfident. Jake would also provide me perspective if I felt stuck. It wasn't flawless. What is a family? But no matter what, we were always there for one another. Then things began to shift, and it all started when Jake first met Emma, his girlfriend. The beginning of Jake and Emma's relationship was reminiscent of a romantic comedy. That was Jake's description anyhow. Emma was the vivacious, self-assured sort who could make friends with everyone, and they met at work. Even though Jake was more reserved and solemn, they nevertheless bonded. I suppose that opposites attract. Jake was beaming when he initially informed us about her. "She's incredible," he remarked. "Funny, intelligent, and not overly serious. She may be the one in my opinion." Since Jake is not the kind to get caught up in sentiments, it was a major deal for him to say that. He tends to ponder too much about things. But he appeared certain about Emma. Emma blended well in when she initially visited to meet the family. It seemed almost strange. You know how introducing someone new to a close-knit group may be awkward? Not with Emma. She was humorous and endearing. She put everybody at ease. Even Sarah, who is inherently wary of strangers, immediately warmed up to her. "She's fantastic." Later, Sarah informed me, Jake is fortunate to have located her. To be honest, I concurred. Emma appeared to be just what Jake needed at the time. Emma and Alex bonded right away when they first met that night. There was an unmistakable spark between them, and everyone saw Alex being himself. Tried to put her to the test with his caustic humor and clever sarcasm. Emma didn't pause for anything. Alex was very amazed as she responded with her own witty retorts. It resembled a masterclass in banter. They joked about for half the night, and at the end of it, even Alex was grinning broadly. But for a time, everything appeared to be ideal. In a good way, Jake and Emma were inseparable. On the weekends, they would go trekking, try out new eateries, or simply watch movies at home. Jake was more joyful than I had ever witnessed. However, things began to change when Emma began to visit the family home more frequently. It seemed subtle at first. It was so delicate that I questioned whether I was dreaming. I began to notice more things after that. There seems to be a connection between Emma and Alex, nothing blatantly improper. They would chuckle at little private jokes. Jake didn't appear to know. At one of the family meals, Alex and Emma usually ended themselves seated close to one another, and their enthusiastic chats drowned out the rest of us. At first, Jake remained silent, but I could see that his smile would waver as Emma and Alex spoke. I dismissed it. Emma is the only one. Alex is magnetic, and she's gregarious, I told myself. It has no significance. But I had a sneaking suspicion that something wasn't right. In retrospect, I see that the rifts in our family dynamic began to appear long before anyone became aware of them. Alex had been selfish from the beginning. However, this was not like the others, and Jake, who had admired Alex for so long, was beginning to view him differently. Then came the day Jake took Emma to our family's usual Sunday meal. I immediately started to feel a more significant change. Emma and Alex began making jokes about something that had happened at work during supper. They were virtually crying because they were laughing so much. Jake was simply sitting there grinning courteously. Even though it wasn't important, I felt uneasy about it. I couldn't pinpoint it for some reason. Sarah drew me aside later that night. "Is it just me? Or does Emma and Alex appear to get along so well?" she inquired. I dismissed it. "All they are doing is getting along. You are aware of Alex's attraction to his people." Sarah, however, looked at me. "Yes, but Jake, not Alex, is her boyfriend." For that, I had no response. However, once Sarah began to detect too, it is clear that something is amiss. Those small instances began to accumulate over the course of the weeks. At family get-togethers, Emma and Alex would chuckle at internal jokes that Jake didn't appear to be involved in. Emma always seemed to be drawn to Alex, and they would engage in intense discussions that excluded everyone else. Although Jake remained silent, I could see he was also taking notice. We all attended a cookout at Sarah's place once. I was sitting on the balcony listening to Emma and Alex converse as Jake went inside to get drinks for everyone. They were laughing over something while standing rather close to one another. Emma immediately moved away from Alex as Jake returned, as if she had been caught in the act. Jake's expression stiffened, but he remained silent. Jake unexpectedly contacted me a few days later. "Hello, may I ask you a question?" He sounded uncertain as he said, "Sure," I said, curious to know what he was thinking. "Do you believe that Alex and Emma are too close?" he inquired. I was taken by surprise. "What are you saying?" Jake let out a sigh. "I'm not sure. They seem to have this problem at times, though, as if I weren't present in the room when they were speaking. Am I reading too much into this?" I was at a loss for words. On the one hand, I didn't want to worsen his feelings, so I sought to comfort him. Nevertheless, I had also observed it. Emma is just gregarious, in my opinion. Finally, I said, "You are aware of Alex's personality. People are affected by him in that way. It's probably nothing." Jake sounded unconvinced. "Yes, perhaps I just did. I'm not sure. I've been bothered by it." It was difficult not to notice after that. Emma and Alex were back to their old ways during the next family meal, laughing, making jokes, and essentially completing one another's sentences. Jake was nibbling at his dinner and was abnormally silent. He drew me aside after supper. "Did you not see it?" His voice was quiet as he inquired. "What did you see?" I said, feigning ignorance. "Don't do that, please." With a hint of annoyance in his voice, he spoke. "You understand what I mean? The manner in which they behave. It's not typical. I was at a loss for words. I said, "Look, I understand. It's strange, but perhaps it's a personality trait. Emma is gregarious. Alex is as well." "Okay, Alex," Jake gave a headshake. "Not in my opinion." Silently, he said, "There's a problem." From then, things just got worse. As siblings and Emma, we attended a game night at Mom's place one evening. Emma was up when we were playing charades. She giggled every time Alex shouted guesses. By the end of the night, Jake seemed to have vanished. Jake appeared to be struggling to keep his composure. Jake turned to face me as we walked away. He said, "I need to know if I'm crazy or if something's going on." I had nothing to say to him. I didn't want to raise suspicions in his mind. Even so, I had no idea what was going on between the two. However, following what transpired, I regret not speaking out sooner. At least Jake wouldn't have felt so isolated, even though perhaps nothing would have changed. However, I kept reminding myself at the time that I had no business becoming involved. But as the situation intensified, it became evident that something was going to blow out, and we would all be affected. I assumed things would settle down when Jake confessed in me that he was uncomfortable with Emma and Alex's apparent closeness. Perhaps Alex would become tired and move on to whatever was next in his circle. Or perhaps Emma would sense Jake's attitude and tone down the too pleasant remarks. Rather, the anxiety began to permeate every family conversation. It wasn't like everything exploded in a single, clear-cut instant. At least, not yet. The entire structure seemed as though it were about to collapse due to a succession of small fissures that were developing in the foundation. Sarah asked us all to supper at her house one evening. These sibling gatherings were very important to her. Claimed that because we were all now grown-ups, it was her method of keeping us grounded. It was meant to be a laid-back evening, but something didn't seem quite right as soon as Emma and Alex showed up. Jake had been more reserved than normal recently, and this evening was no exception. He largely remained silent, allowing others to speak. Alex was taking in everything as if he were the primary character in the room, while Emma was being her own vivacious self, joking and chatting. While the rest of us remained in the living room, Emma and Alex found themselves in the kitchen together at one point. There was a great deal of laughter, but I'm not sure what they were discussing. Too much, to be honest. Jake gave the kitchen a few sidelong glances but remained silent. Sarah also saw, and she gave me a look that said, "Are you seeing this?" When they returned at last, Jake looked at neither of them for very long. His entire demeanor changed, and he avoided direct conversation with Emma for the remainder of the evening. Mom threw one of her traditional Sunday meals a few weeks later. Even though we all had other obligations, Mom insisted on keeping this custom, which was very important in our family. Jake usually enjoyed these feasts. He would question Mom about her garden, make jokes with Sarah, and appear calm for a few hours. However, he was very different this time. Emma was almost a member of the family by now, so it wasn't surprising that she and Alex turned up together. They appeared to be in their own world, laughing at some dumb joke Alex was telling, which was odd. The way they communicated felt too familiar, even if I missed all the details. Sitting across from them, Jake remained silent. Emma once laughed and reached out to stroke Alex's arm. Jake's jaw tightened. I swear. You could sense the tension in the air, even though he didn't create a scene. Mom, who generally doesn't notice things like this, continued looking between them as if she was trying to understand what was happening. One random weekday was the last straw. My phone began buzzing while I was at work. Jake had texted me about it. "Jake, she is no longer there." It stated nothing more. I phoned him right away since I was perplexed, and his voice was tremulous as he answered. She went out. He said that she had packed all her belongings and confessed her love for Alex. Alex, I had no idea what to say. I inquired as if I needed to hear it again in order to be convinced. "Yeah," muttered Jake sourly. "My own brother." Jake was a complete mess by the time I arrived at his house that night. There was chaos in the living room. Everything was strewn about, as if he had been too furious to give a damn where anything led to a photo of him. Emma was on the floor, laying face down. Jake sat on the couch and gazed at nothing. She made no effort to conceal it. She stated that as if it were inconsequential when I sat down next to him, he said, Alex has captured my heart. I was at a loss for words. What are you interested in doing? Finally, I asked. Jake simply gave a headshake. How can I help? She is no longer there. Alex, too. His voice wavered as he hesitated. Alex is no longer my brother. I was very offended by the pain in his eyes and became enraged at the injustice of it all. Not just Alex. I tried to console him by putting my arm over his shoulder. Jake, we will overcome this, even if it feels like the end of the world right now. That evening, I felt as though everything had changed as I left Jake's apartment. Our family, which had always been based on support, loyalty, and trust, seemed irreparably damaged. The consequences were only getting started. Even yet, I was aware that things would never be the same. Following Jake's revelation that Emma had left him for Alex, our family's situation deteriorated. To be honest, I believe that we all had a gut feeling that something wasn't right before this incident occurred. However, none wished to accept that it may be genuine. Who wants to acknowledge that their brother would betray them in such a manner? Jake missed our mom's regular Sunday supper the day after Emma left, which was a first. That morning, he sent me a text. I will not be attending. Tell your mother, please. I didn't hold him responsible. I couldn't have shown up and pretended that nothing was wrong. Mom became really concerned when I informed her that Jake would not be attending. Look what's happening, Mom, she inquired. For a moment, I froze. I wasn't sure whether I should tell her everything, but why not tell her? Emma departed from Jake. She's now with Alex, I said. I should have informed her that the sky was falling. She seems really taken aback, as if she was unable to comprehend what I was saying. What are you saying? Is she with Alex? Behind Jake's back, they had been having sex. I clarified. She declared her love for Jake. For a minute, Mom sat there and shook her head. No, she answered. That's not what Alex would do. He refused. I didn't answer. What was the purpose? It was the truth, even if I didn't want to believe it. Everyone in the family knew Sarah was angry by the middle of the week. As soon as she heard, she called me. What on earth is the matter with Alex? She lost her temper. His brother is Jake. How could he have done such a repulsive thing? I had nothing to say. What do you even say about it, really? Dad, however, wasted no time either. He gave Alex a call. Jake informed me that Dad didn't hold back, even though I wasn't present when the call came in. I don't have a son. Before throwing the phone down, he said, Dad has always been the type of man who values loyalty more than anything else, and this went beyond all boundaries. Sarah also made the decision to face Alex. She gave him one call, then banned his phone after letting him have it. After that, she had no desire to interact with him. However, Mom was unique. It was impossible for her to interrupt Alex. She remains my son. As if it resolved the matter, she continued to say, by that time, Jake couldn't stand being in the house and was living at my house. He had told Emma about it. Mom contacted me one evening to ask if I could get Jake to speak with her. He refuses to take my calls. I said, she said, all I want to do is check on him. Jake shook his head when I brought it up. I can't handle her at this time, he remarked. I'm not interested in listening to her attempt to defend Alex. I didn't press him. I couldn't really blame him. Mom asked us all over for supper a few weeks later, stating that she wanted to discuss the future of the family. I made the decision to go even if Jake wouldn't go, simply to hear her opinion. Alex was seated in the dining room as I entered. I nearly turned around and walked away. It seemed unbelievable to me that his mother had invited him without notifying anyone. After a few minutes, Sarah arrived, noticed Alex, and began yelling right away. Mom, are you serious? After what he did, do you really think we're simply going to sit here and play happy family with him? In an attempt to soothe her, Mom mentioned forgiveness and the need of maintaining our family's unity. Sarah, however, would have none of it. He ruined Jake, she yelled. You're also behaving as though it doesn't matter. Alex remained silent as he sat there. I don't know if he didn't care enough to defend himself or if he was embarrassed. In any case, I felt ill. I followed Sarah as she rushed out. Are you coming? As she made her way to her car, she inquired. I can't sit in there with him, I replied. Things became even more tense after that disastrous supper. Jake completely ceased communicating with Mom. She made up her mind. She'd choose Alex over me, he said. Even though Sarah and I still speak with our mother, our conversations have always descended into conflict. He is your sibling. Every time we mentioned Alex, she would say, no. One day I told her, he did something that a true brother would never do. He is now on his own. Then, unexpectedly, word leaked out that Alex and Emma were engaged. In fact, they dared to invite every member of the family to the wedding. Like, none of us went, yet everything was all right. Not me, nor Sarah, nor Jake, and most certainly not Dad. Naturally, Mom attended the wedding. She even shared photos of herself on Facebook, grinning broadly as if nothing were wrong. Jake simply shook his head when he saw them. She's gone crazy. Sarah was more irate, he claimed. She is feigning indifference. It's horrible, she remarked. Alex and Emma seemed to be attempting to hide the existence of the rest of us after the wedding. They shared images of their new home, vacations, and gushy anniversary postings on social media, sharing their ideal existence. The others, however, we also acted as though they didn't exist. In spite of everything, Jake isn't the kind to provoke conflict or hurt others. He's furious and wounded. Yes. In my opinion, though, he's only attempting to make sense of everything and go on with his life. He won't ever face Alex head-on or take any extreme action, in my opinion. He's simply not like that. He is instead concentrating on getting better and starting over without Emma. Although the trip has been difficult, I have faith in Jake. He's tough. He's finding strength in his own way, even if the wounds of betrayal will never go away. Although it has been difficult, we are gradually adjusting to life without them. We're keeping together, but family get-togethers are quieter lately. Although it's a new type of normal, I wish I could claim that things are back to normal. I'll update everyone on the situation. There will inevitably be more drama in the future. Who knows? Perhaps there will also be some reconciliation. I appreciate your patience during this crazy journey. Watch this space for updates. One update. Okay, the promised update is here. The Alex and Emma front has been silent for a long. That's what I believed anyhow. We didn't actually monitor them. Following the wedding, we would completely cut them off. Jake was putting his life back together. Dad wouldn't even allow Alex's name to be spoken in conversation, and Sarah was preoccupied with her profession. The only person who was still in contact with him was Mom, but even she refrained from talking about him excessively in front of the other kids. Then one night, my mother phoned me out of the blue. She sounded tremulous, as if she were about to cry. She said, "Alex needs us." I nearly ignored Alex because I wasn't in the mood to act like a therapist, but I was intrigued by something in her tone. What took place? Already preparing myself for some absurd scenario, I asked. She added in a shaky voice, "It's Emma." He discovered that she was unfaithful. I was unable to resist. I chuckled. Come on, even if I realized that wasn't the most responsible response. The irony was overwhelming. "Who is it with?" I inquired. I'm almost anticipating her response already. His closest companion. Her voice was one of horror as she said, I almost dropped my phone. Hold on. What? Emma and his closest buddy had apparently been interrupted by Alex. While they were doing anything, let's name him Chris. Emma didn't even attempt to deny that he had addressed them. She informed him that she and Chris had a connection and that she had been unhappy for some time. It seemed like the cruelest prank ever to hear this. I mean, Emma turned around and did the same to Jake after Alex shattered his life for her. This had to be karma, if there is such a thing. Jake simply shrugged his shoulders when I told him about it. Figures, he said. I couldn't believe he was that composed. Knowing that he's getting a taste of his own medicine makes you feel better, doesn't it? I inquired. After giving it some thought, Jake shook his head. Not at all. What he did to me remains the same. That really got to me. Jake had lost his anger and bitterness. He had just finished. He no longer cared about Alex. He seemed to have put that chapter behind him and moved on. And to be honest, I was pleased with him for it. When I informed Sarah, however, she had a lot to say. Serves him right, she chuckled. As much as it wounded Jake, I pray it pains you too. Even Dad, who doesn't talk much about Alex anymore, had something to say. He claimed that boy made his decisions. He must now reside with them. Mom, predictable. His goal was to unite the family behind Alex. He is devastated. She informed me. We must help him, support him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I lost it after what he did to Jake. Using her favorite justification for Alex's actions, she said that she made a mistake. No, Mom, I firmly responded. Forgetting someone's birthday is an error. This was a conscious decision. Again and again. The fact that he is your son does not give him a pass. After everything went down, Alex began phoning me. But I didn't answer his calls. I didn't want to listen to his narrative of sobbing. What was I meant to say, really? Apologies. You sort of brought it on yourself, yet your life fell apart. Jake informed me that Alex attempted to contact him as well, but he blocked his number right away. I'd rather not hear it. Jake said. He prepared his bed. Mom, meantime, persisted in advocating for a family get-together. Even her suggestion to have Alex home for Sunday supper went about as smoothly as you might anticipate. Are you serious? When Mom brought it up, Sarah said, Is it likely that Jake will sit across from Alex at the table and act as though nothing is wrong, since that isn't taking place? Mom let out a sigh. You still have him as a brother, as like it will miraculously make everything better, she added. No, Sarah said icily. He isn't. As for Alex and Emma, their idyllic little existence quickly fell apart. Almost immediately after Alex learned about the affair, Emma moved in with Chris. They posted images on social media as if they hadn't left a path of devastation in their wake, without even making an effort to keep things low-key. According to what my mother told me, Alex was a total mess. He had been staying with a friend as he considered his options. When he told his mother everything, he sobbed, according to Mom, and stated he had no idea how things had gone so bad. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. The way things had gone wrong was rather clear. Alex was now suffering the price for destroying his family for Emma. We didn't feel sorry for Alex anymore. Not Sarah, Jake, myself, and most definitely not Dad. The rest of us had moved on, but Mom was the only one who still believed that we could somehow overcome all of this. Jake began to think about his future and himself. Sarah became so focused on her profession that she hardly spoke about Alex anymore. Dad. Eliminating Alex completely gave him tranquility. Personally, I no longer felt the need to act as a mediator. I would no longer pretend that everything was all right. Alex had to deal with the repercussions of his decisions. The most recent is that you may be correct if you believe that this is the conclusion of the narrative, or perhaps not. In any case, I'm relieved that their drama is behind me. The last update. Okay, everyone, here is the last update. Or at least that's what I believe it is after my last update a few months ago. To be honest, I didn't anticipate the direction things have taken. After everything that has transpired, you would think that we would all simply part ways and let the problem to be resolved. However, no. Life was about to get a little more chaotic. Alex went into full-on damage control once the whole Emma and Chris issue blew out. In an attempt to explain himself, he messaged Sarah, Jake, and myself repeatedly, but none of us responded. The twist then appeared. I was surprised when Chris broke up with Emma. Yes, a few weeks after they moved in together, the man she left Alex for threw her out. According to what my mother informed me, she was still speaking to Emma, of course. Chris wasn't prepared for a committed relationship. I suppose he wasn't excited enough about robbing another man of his fiancée. After that, Emma reportedly attempted to return to Alex. She called him in tears and said that she had messed up. She makes too many mistakes, so I'm not sure which one she intended. Surprisingly, though, Alex did not accept her back. I was betrayed by her. I can't trust Mom anymore, he said. Isn't that ironic? Alex did to him what he did to Jake, and the lady he ruined his family for did the same to him. I may have chuckled if I weren't so irritated by the whole thing. It gets considerably messier from here. This was the ideal moment to press for reconciliation, according to Mom. Bless her. Alex wants to talk to Jake, she stated excitedly over the phone one evening. He is prepared to make amends and provide an apology. I nearly dropped my phone. Are you serious, Mom? Jake is not interested in hearing from Alex. He has moved on. He remains his sibling. I said, she said. As if all Alex had done had been miraculously erased. Naturally, she ignored my advice to stop talking. Rather, she attempted to organize an intervention. Without informing Jake that Alex would be present, she extended an invitation to her home. Alex was seated at the kitchen table when Jake arrived, assuming it would be a routine visit. Jake subsequently informed me that it was all he could do not to turn around and go right away. Why is he in this place? Jake glared at his mother as he asked. I simply assumed that you two could communicate, Mom said in an optimistic yet obnoxious tone. Jake stated there was nothing to discuss. To his credit, Alex made an effort to apologize. He made all the correct statements. How he felt bad for hurting Jake, how he had committed the greatest error of his life. He will do anything to regain it. Jake, however, would have none of it. He responded, You didn't just hurt me. Our family was ruined by you. Alex, you made your decision. Accept it. He then turned to go. I could see Jake was still unhappy when he told me about it. Mom had placed him in that situation, not because he felt bad about what he said. He said, It's unbelievable that she did that to me. She's meant to support me. I was at a loss for words. I mean, he was right. Everything has only become worse because of Mom's incessant urge to mend things. Since then, Alex hasn't communicated with me very much. According to his mother, he has been making an effort to improve himself. Whatever it implies, he continues to live alone. He is still working to put his life back together after Emma. Conversely, Jake is doing better than I have seen him in a long time. He has returned to the gym, is spending time with his buddies, and has even begun seeing someone new. For the first time in a long time, he appears to be truly pleased, yet he isn't hurrying into anything serious. Sarah is also doing well. She has been concentrating on her work and no longer wastes time on Emma or Alex. Every time her mother brings them up, she responds, They're not my problem. Dad. He avoided being involved in any of it. Since the aftermath, he hasn't talked to Alex, and I don't think he ever will. He holds family loyalty in the highest regard, and Alex betrayed it in the most heinous way. For my part, I'm simply relieved that it's all over. I'm not in the mood to follow Alex or worry what's happening in his life. We all had to deal with the fallout from his decisions. Now, however, we are now proceeding, one step at a time. So indeed, that is the current situation. To be honest, we're all happier now that Alex is no longer in our life. That concludes the update. I appreciate your patience with me during this fiasco. Hopefully, life will be a bit less dramatic in the future. Are you serious? Jake is not interested in hearing from Alex. He has moved on. He remains his sibling. I said, she said. As if all Alex had done had been miraculously erased. Naturally, she ignored my advice to stop talking. Rather, she attempted to organize an intervention. Without informing Jake that Alex would be present, she extended an invitation to her home. Alex was seated at the kitchen table when Jake arrived, assuming it would be a routine visit. Jake subsequently informed me that it was all he could do not to turn around and go right away. Why is he in this place? Jake glared at his mother as he asked. I simply assumed that you two could communicate, Mom said in an optimistic yet obnoxious tone. Jake stated there was nothing to discuss. To his credit, Alex made an effort to apologize. He made all the correct statements. How he felt bad for hurting Jake, how he had committed the greatest error of his life. He will do anything to regain it. Jake, however, would have none of it. He responded, You didn't just hurt me. Our family was ruined by you. Alex, you made your decision. Accept it. He then turned to go. I could see Jake was still unhappy when he told me about it. Mom had placed him in that situation, not because he felt bad about what he said. He said, It's unbelievable that she did that to me. She's meant to support me. I was at a loss for words. I mean, he was right. Everything has only become worse because of Mom's incessant urge to mend things. Since then, Alex hasn't communicated with me very much. According to his mother, he has been making an effort to improve himself. Whatever it implies, he continues to live alone. He is still working to put his life back together after Emma. Conversely, Jake is doing better than I have seen him in a long time. He has returned to the gym, is spending time with his buddies, and has even begun seeing someone new. For the first time in a long time, he appears to be truly pleased, yet he isn't hurrying into anything serious. Sarah is also doing well. She has been concentrating on her work and no longer wastes time on Emma or Alex. Every time her mother brings them up, she responds, "They're not my problem." Dad. He avoided being involved in any of it. Since the aftermath, he hasn't talked to Alex, and I don't think he ever will. He holds family loyalty in the highest regard, and Alex betrayed it in the most heinous way. For my part, I'm simply relieved that it's all over. I'm not in the mood to follow Alex or worry what's happening in his life. We all had to deal with the fallout from his decisions. Now, however, we are now proceeding, one step at a time. So indeed, that is the current situation. To be honest, we're all happier now that Alex is no longer in our life. That concludes the update. I appreciate your patience with me during this fiasco. Hopefully, life will be a bit less dramatic in the future.